Okay, the first step to disassemble your Longshot is to remove the priming handle. And to do this, I like to use 2 flathead screwdrivers and come up underneath it and pry the handle up. This minimizes damage to your shell and the handle itself. And you can take this and set it aside. The next step is to remove all the screws from your blaster. I've already done that, and set these aside so you do not lose them. Now the next step is to open the shell and remove your stock internals, which I have also already done. Now, once you have your stock internals out, you need to disassemble the plunger assembly and get these 2 screws and the large silver screw that holds the plunger face on. And they look like this. These are the 2 plunger screws and the plunger face screw. Next, you need to assemble the kit parts. Okay, the first step in assembling the kit is to put the plunger together. And to do that, you need the rear of your breech. Actually, no you don't. You need the plunger rod, plunger face, rear retention plate, and the spring. I'm using the 8 kg spring here. So first put the plunger retention plate on the plunger rod, and then take the silver screw, and what I like to do is thread the silver screw down and then back out. It'll make it easier to install once the spring is on. I'm using a slightly larger Phillips head screwdriver to fit the larger head on this screw. Let's get it started first. Okay, next put the spring on and the plunger face. Now the plunger face fits onto the plunger rod only one way. You have to line up the notches on the rod with the grooves in the plunger face. And you have to compress the spring while doing it, which is not very easy. It's one of those things where having extra hands would help. Okay, there. Now it's fully seated. As you can see, that is not very easy, but you have to make sure you fully seat the plunger face. Next, take the rear of your breech and your plunger face and install the O-rings. Okay. And then take your silicone grease, which I have in this little cup, and grease the inside of the plunger and both O-rings. The rear of the breech goes in first, so go ahead and grease that up first. And then push it until the rear of the plunger protrudes from the plunger, or the rear of the breech protrudes from the plunger body. And then take the 2 small silver screws and screw the retention cap to the plunger body using a smaller screwdriver. It's much easier to thread these screws than it is the larger silver screw. Okay. Next, take the front portion of the breech and screw it to the rear portion of the breech. Be careful not to over tighten, but do make sure you tighten it down till it's snug. There. There's no reason to grip this with pliers or anything and really crank it down. Okay, and then take your bolt sled and pin the plunger assembly to your bolt sled using the included pin. All right. Okay, next you want to install the plunger assembly in your blaster. And I like to keep the bolt sled lock to help hold everything forward during use. So line up the notches cut into your shell with the grooves on the bolt sled. Oh, and this protrusion on the plunger fits into this hole here. And then the bolt sled lock sits right here at the very tail end of the bolt sled. Okay, next take your trigger catch spring and attach it to the post on the trigger catch and install it in the rear of your blaster. Be careful not to let the spring fly free, because it has a tendency to do that during installation. Like that. And next is the trigger and trigger catch spring and trigger spring, excuse me. Okay. At this point, screw the trigger down. But not too tight. Okay, when you have everything installed, it should look something like this. And now reattach the two halves of the shell. And check your magazine release to make sure it's lined up. At this point, go ahead and put the screws back in. After the two halves of your shell are screwed together, go ahead and install your priming handle, just like you would on a long strike. If you were an early pre-order, go ahead and install the Immortal priming handle. And unlike the original, this priming handle threads together so you can easily take your blaster apart when you need to. Just keep in mind that these handles are actually two pieces. There's this cap which hugs the side of your blaster, making sure that you prime straight back, making one-handed priming a lot easier. And then there's this half which you grab and that this post threads into. So this helps guide the threaded rod straight in so you don't accidentally screw it in at an angle. So to install it, make sure that these two halves are attached, because you don't want them coming off when you're trying to install your handle. So then thread the rod through the hole in your bolt sled. You have to pull it back slightly to do that. Press it all the way through, and then thread your other half of the handle on. It has to screw down quite a ways, but be careful not to over tighten it. Just screw it down until this collar here is snug against your blaster, or just barely touching your blaster, not snug against it. So, and then you can start to feel it cutting the threads. And almost done. Alright, there we go. So it has very, very little side-to-side play, giving you a nice straight prime, one-handed. And this is with the 8 kg spring. It's actually fairly easy to prime. So there you go. That is the Immortal Kit by Orange Mod Works. Thanks for watching.